Hello and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. Welcome to the daily quiz discussion for the 30th of June 2022. Before we begin, a few updates on our initiatives. We are glad to announce the National Scholarship Test due to be held on the 3rd of July at 11 a.m. By taking part in the scholarship test, you have the opportunity to win scholarship up to 90%. But to take up this test, you need to register first. You can find the registration link in the description box below. Also, tomorrow, that is the 1st of July, join us live at 8 pm for a discussion on the Maharashtra political crisis and the anti-defection law. This session will be handled by Sarmad sir under the Explained series. Beginning with the first question of the day, which reads, which of the following statements are correct with respect to election to the office of the Vice President of India? There are four question statements given here. Let us have a look at them. The first one reads, the Vice President is elected by an electoral college consisting of members both elected as well as nominated of both houses of the Parliament. The vote of a member from the Rajya Sabha has a higher value as compared to that of a member from the Lok Sabha. Under the system of proportional representation by means of a single transferable vote, as envisaged for the election of the Vice President, an elector must compulsorily mark as many preferences as there are number of candidates. And the last statement reads, the election shall be by secret ballot and the political parties cannot issue any whip to their MPs in the matter of voting in the vice presidential elections. Please have a look at the options. Now, what is the context? These articles from both the Hindu as well as the PIB note the upcoming vice presidential election. This would be the 16th vice presidential election. Given that the term of the current Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu is due to end on August 10th, the Election Commission of India has announced that the election to the next Vice President would be held on August 6th. Coming back to the question. The first statement is correct. That is, the Electoral College for the election of the Vice President consists of both elected as well as nominated members of both houses of Parliament. Note the difference between the Electoral College of the President and the Vice President. While the Electoral College of the President includes only elected members of the House of Parliament, in the case of Vice President, it includes both elected as well as nominated. Also, the Electoral College of a President involves not only members of Parliament but also elected members of legislative assemblies of the states. That is not the case for the Electoral College of the Vice President, which involves only members of the Parliament. Next, the second statement is wrong. Why? Because the value of votes of all the members of Parliament, irrespective of them being from the Rajya Sabha or the Lok Sabha, remains the same. The third statement is also wrong because under the system of proportional representation by means of a single transferable vote as envisaged for the election of the Vice President, only marking of the first preference is compulsory for the vote to be considered. Other preferences are only optional. Note, this system is prescribed in Article 66 bar 1 of the Indian Constitution. The fourth statement is correct. That is, the election to the office of Vice President is to be held by secret ballot. This is also mentioned in the Constitution. And also, the political parties cannot issue any whip to their MPs. This is similar to what is observed in the election process to the office of President of India. The electors are allowed to exercise conscience vote. Since the question asks for the correct statements, the answer to this question would be option C, 1 and 4 only. Moving on to the second question of the day, which reads, consider the following statements with respect to marine exports from India. The three question statements are as follows. The first one reads, the marine exports from India have witnessed a decline in the last 3 years owing to the disruption caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. The second statement reads, frozen shrimp remains the major export item from India, both in terms of quantity as well as value. And the third statement reads, USA is the topmost importer of Indian seafood, both in terms of value as well as volume. Which of the following statements are correct? Please have a look at the options. Now, what is the context? This article from today's PIB as well as the Hindu note a record increase in exports of marine products from India. The marine exports have increased from 5.96 billion US dollars in the previous fiscal year to the current 7.76 billion during 2021-2022. This marks a 30% increase. Also, this figure that is 7.76 billion is a all-time high when it comes to export of marine products from India. Also note, frozen shrimp remains the major item of export. When it comes to export destination, USA stands first, which is followed by China, European Union, Southeast Asia, Japan and Middle East. Coming back to the question. From our discussion, it is clear that statement 1 is wrong because marine exports from India have not witnessed a decline but they have witnessed a record increase. Also, the second and third statements are correct as discussed previously. Since the question asks for the correct statements, the answer to this question would be option B, 2 and 3 only. Moving on to the third question. It reads, which of the following statements is or are correct with respect to mRNA vaccines? There are two question statements given here. The first one reads, unlike the traditional vaccines, mRNA vaccines do not contain a weakened or inactivated virus, but rather enables the body itself to produce the virus protein to trigger an immune response. The second statement reads, currently, India does not have any domestically developed mRNA vaccines available in the country. Please have a look at the options. Now, what is the context? This article from today's The Indian Express notes the country's first homegrown mRNA COVID-19 vaccine, Gemcovac, getting restricted emergency use approval in India. Note, this Gemcovac 19 vaccine has been developed at Pune's Genova Biopharmaceuticals. In this context, let us understand how mRNA vaccines work. Note, as against the traditional vaccines, which either use a weakened or inactivated virus to trigger an immune response in the body, the mRNA vaccines do not inject the virus or a part of it. So how do mRNA vaccines work then? The mRNA vaccines enables the body itself to make a part of the virus. So the mRNA vaccines inject messenger RNA or mRNA that teaches the body to make the spike protein of the coronavirus. One of the biggest advantages of mRNA vaccines is that in the case of mRNA vaccines, smaller doses is required because the body itself can create the antigen, which in the case of COVID is the spike protein by itself. However, one of the major challenges with mRNA vaccines is that they are fragile and need to be stored at ultra low temperatures. When I mean ultra low temperatures, this is below zero to prevent them from breaking down. This is a serious hindrance to the adoption of mRNA vaccines in India. However, the domestically developed Gemcovac 19 vaccine is unique given that unlike other mRNA vaccines, it need not be stored at ultra low sub-zero temperatures. This makes this vaccine Gemcovac suitable for India's needs. From our discussion, it becomes clear that statement 1 is correct. However, statement 2 is wrong. Since the question asks for the correct statement, the answer to this question would be option A, 1 only. Moving on to the fourth question of the day. It reads, which of the following statements best describes the Tunguska event? The four options are as follows. Option A, the largest volcanic activity ever recorded in human history. Option B, the hypothetical situation in which a large asteroid impact would wipe out a substantial share of human population. Option C, the meteor air burst that occurred in 1908, leading to the destruction of vast swathes of forest in Russian Siberian taiga. Option D, it is the largest known recording of fast radio bursts from the Hawaii Mauna Kea observatories. What is the context? This article from the daily quiz section of the Hindu notes the Tunguska event, which was the largest impact event on Earth in human recorded history, having occurred on this date in 1908. So what was the Tunguska event? This event occurred in the eastern Siberian taiga region of Russia. It was basically a meteor airburst. Now, what do we mean by a meteor airburst? It is the atmospheric explosion of a meteorite. Such was the magnitude of power released during the explosion that this meteor airburst flattened trees around 2000 plus kilometers square of forest. Even though no impact craters have been found at the site, this is classified as an impact event. And as stated previously, this is the largest impact event on Earth in recorded history. Coming back to the question. From our discussion, it is clear that the answer to this question is option C. Moving on to the last question of the day, which reads, which of the following groups of plants was domesticated in the New World and introduced into the Old World? Please have a look at the options given. During the 15th and 16th century, we had a process called Columbian exchange. Now, what do we mean by Columbian exchange? It involved the widespread transfer of plants, animals, culture, human population, technology, diseases, and ideas between Americas, West Africa, and the Old World. And among these plants, the most notable were tobacco, cocoa, and rubber. Note, these three plants came to India through Europeans in the late medieval or early modern era. All of these three, that is tobacco, cocoa, and rubber, are believed to have originated in South America. Hence, the answer is option A. Moving on to the fact of the day, capstone. Here, it stands for Cislunar Autonomous Positioning System Technology Operations and Navigation Experiment. What is the context? This article from today's The Indian Express notes the launch of the NASA satellite Capstone. Now, what is this Capstone satellite? It is basically a lunar orbiter. What is the objective of this satellite launch? This satellite Capstone will test and verify the calculated orbital stability planned for the Gateway Space Station. Now, let us understand about this Gateway Space Station. This is basically a in-development space station. This Gateway Space Station will serve as a communication hub, lab for scientific experimentations, short-term habitation module, as well as a holding area for robots. Gateway Space Station is slated to play a major role in NASA's Artemis program, which is a planned manned mission to Moon. This Gateway Space Station is planned to be placed in a novel lunar orbit that has not been used previously. This novel lunar orbit is referred to as the Near Rectilinear Halo Orbit, or the NRHO in short. Now, what is the significance of this novel orbit? This NRHO orbit offers long-term stability with low propellant requirement for orbital station keeping. How does this do it? By using a precise balance point in the gravities of Earth and Moon. Also note, apart from testing this orbital stability of the NRHO, the Capstone satellite will also test a navigation system called the Cislunar Autonomous Positioning System, or CAPS. This navigation system will help the satellite measure its position relative to NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter without even relying on the ground stations. This is all for today's discussion. Thank you for being with us.